everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on something I know a lot of you are curious about, air fryers.
Yeah, those are pretty popular these days.
That's right, they are. We're seeing them everywhere, and everyone wants to know, are they really as healthy as they seem?
Are they just hype?
Exactly. So to get to the bottom of this, we're taking a look at this article from EatingWell.com. It's called, Is Air Frying Healthy? Here's what a dietitian says. And it was published pretty recently, December 10th, 2024. So it seems like everybody's got an opinion on air fryers, but we really want to go past the opinions and just get into the facts.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So, first of all, what exactly is an air fryer?
Right, good point.
Well, the article describes it as kind of a hybrid between a deep fryer and a convection oven.
Ooh, interesting, like a best of both worlds kind of thing. But then what makes it different from just using my regular oven?
Yeah, so it all comes down to the airflow.
Yeah.
In an air fryer, your food, it just sits in a basket and it's blasted with this superheated air that circulates really rapidly. And that's what creates that crispy, crunchy texture that we all love from deep frying, but without actually submerging the food in the oil.
Oh, so it's kind of like a more intense version of a convection oven then.
Exactly. And that concentrated airflow cooks your food much faster than a traditional oven would.
Okay, so that's definitely a plus in terms of convenience. But let's get to the health aspect here. Obviously, less oil means fewer calories. Are there any other benefits beyond that?
Absolutely. You know, when you deep fry something, it can actually increase the formation of inflammatory compounds. And those compounds have actually been linked to an increased risk of chronic diseases.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so air fryers, since they're using significantly less oil,
Yeah.
they could potentially reduce that risk.
So it's not just about the calories, but also how the cooking process itself can affect the food.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And what's really interesting is that air frying might be particularly beneficial for starchy foods.
Really? Like what?
Potatoes.
Potatoes, okay.
So because air frying takes a bit longer than deep frying, the starch in the potatoes actually breaks down differently. And this actually results in a higher concentration of what's called slowly digestible starch.
Slowly digestible starch. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that term.
Yeah, it means that the starch is digested more gradually, so it has kind of a gentler impact on your blood sugar levels compared to rapidly digestible starch.
So theoretically then, air-fried potatoes could be a slightly better choice than the deep-fried kind when it comes to blood sugar?
It could, yeah. But of course, portion control is still key.
Of course, yeah. We can't just eat endless amounts of potatoes no matter how they're cooked.
Right, exactly.
So it seems like context is everything here.
It really is.
When it comes to assessing the healthiness of any cooking method.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about the big picture, not just focusing on one aspect.
So then, where would you say air fryers fall on the health spectrum, in the grand scheme of things?
Well, the article's answer is kind of nuanced. It depends. It is generally healthier than deep frying because of the reduced oil and potential for lower inflammation. However, it's not a free pass to just eat whatever you want.
Right.
An air fryer is not going to magically transform chicken nuggets into a health food.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like the key takeaway here is that while an air fryer can be a really valuable tool for cooking delicious and potentially healthier meals, it's still just a tool. The responsibility really lies with us, the cooks, to make smart choices about what we're actually preparing.
You've hit the nail on the head there. The appliance itself is just one part of the equation.
Okay, I'm really starting to get a much clearer picture now of the nuances here. It's not as simple as air fryers are good and air fryers are bad. It's about understanding their potential benefits and limitations.
Exactly.
And using them wisely.
Right.
So speaking of limitations, are there any potential downsides to air frying that we should be aware of?
Well, one point the article raises is a formation of something called AGs, advanced glycation end products.
AGEs, okay. I think I've heard of those, but I definitely need a refresher on what they are and why we should be mindful of them.
Okay, yeah, so in a nutshell, AGEs form when sugars react with proteins or fats during cooking.
Yeah.
Especially at high temperatures.
So the longer you cook something at a high temperature, the more AGEs it's likely to have.
That's the general idea, yeah.
Yeah.
And while research is still ongoing, consuming too many AGEs over time has been linked to an increased risk of chronic diseases.
Oh, wow.
Like diabetes, cancer, and even Alzheimer's disease.
That's pretty serious.
It is.
So even though air frying generally uses lower temperatures than deep frying, we still need to be mindful of those AGEs, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's something we'll delve into a bit deeper as we continue exploring this topic. It's all about making informed choices and understanding the potential trade-offs
I'm really glad we're having this conversation. It's really helping me to see beyond the marketing hype and get a more realistic view of like the pros and cons of air fryers.
That's what we're here for, to give you the knowledge and insights to make the best choices.
Okay, so before we move on, can we just quickly recap the key points we've covered so far just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Sure, yeah. So we've established that air fryers do offer a potentially healthier alternative to deep frying because they use significantly less oil, which can lead to fewer calories and less absorption of those, potentially harmful inflammatory compounds.
Right. And we've also learned that air frying might be particularly beneficial for starchy foods like potatoes, thanks to the formation of slowly digestible starch, which we know now has a gentler impact on blood sugar.
That's right. But we also need to be mindful of the potential for AGEs to form during cooking,
Yeah.
even at those lower temperatures.
Right, right. So it seems like the bottom line here is that air fryers, like any other cooking method really, have both benefits and drawbacks. The key is to use them wisely and to make informed choices about the foods we prepare.
Precisely.
Okay, I feel like we've covered a really solid foundation for understanding the basics of air fryers.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe now we can dive into some of the more specific
Yeah.
advantages and disadvantages compared to other cooking methods, like oven baking or grilling.
Yeah. I'm really curious to explore the versatility of air fryers and see how they stack up against other cooking techniques in terms of like taste, texture, and overall convenience.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what we uncover.
Okay, great. I'm excited to hear more. Okay, so I'm really excited to dig into the nitty-gritty of air fryer cooking. Where should we start?
Well, you mentioned versatility, so maybe we could explore how air fryers compare to other popular cooking methods, like oven baking and grilling.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about oven baking first. So the article mentioned that both methods use hot air, but an air fryer circulates it more intensely, which obviously leads to faster cooking times. But does that mean the results are comparable?
Not necessarily. While an air fryer can mimic the crispiness of oven-baked foods to some extent, the overall texture can be different. Like, for instance, roasted vegetables tend to develop a slightly softer, almost caramelized texture in the oven because of the longer cooking time and the more even heat distribution.
Interesting. So while an air fryer might be great for like quick weeknight meals, an oven might be a better choice if I'm really going for that specific slow roasted texture.
Exactly. It really comes down to personal preference and your desired outcome.
Okay. And then how does air frying compare to grilling? I mean, because grilling gives you those smoky flavors.
Yeah.
You just can't replicate with any other method.
That's true, yeah. Grilling imparts a unique smoky flavor that's difficult to achieve with an air fryer, mainly because there's no direct contact with flames or hot coals.
Right. But the article did mention that air frying can be a healthier alternative to grilling because it doesn't produce those potentially carcinogenic compounds that can form when meat is cooked over an open flame.
You're right, yeah. When fat drips onto those hot coals or flames, it creates smoke that contains polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or KAHs, which have been classified as possible carcinogens.
So if we're prioritizing health then, air frying might be the better choice if I'm cooking meat rather than grilling.
It could be, yeah.
But what if I'm really craving those smoky flavors? Are there any workarounds?
Some air fryer models actually come with a smoking feature, where you can add wood chips to impart a smoky flavor. But it's worth noting that the results won't be identical to grilling.
Okay, yeah, I see. So each cooking method has its own unique strengths and limitations. It's about choosing the right tool for the job.
I completely agree. And sometimes the best approach is to actually combine different cooking methods.
Oh, okay.
For example, you could pre-grill vegetables
Yep.
to get that smoky char, and then finish them in the air fryer for a quicker cooking time and like added crispiness.
Ooh, that's a great idea. It's like getting the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And it just speaks to the creativity and flexibility that's possible in the kitchen.
Yeah. This conversation is really expanding my thinking about air fryers. I initially thought of them as just a tool for replicating fried foods, but it's clear they can offer so much more than that.
They do, yeah. And that brings us back to the importance of making informed choices about the foods we cook, regardless of the method we choose.
Right, we can't just assume that anything cooked in an air fryer is automatically healthy. It still comes down to the quality of ingredients and the overall balance of our diet.
Absolutely. And speaking of making informed choices, let's go back to those AGs we were discussing earlier.
Yes, please. So you mentioned that they can form during cooking, especially at high temperatures, but is there any way to minimize their formation when I'm using an air fryer?
That's a great question. And the good news is, yes, there are steps you can take to reduce AGE formation. One of the most effective is to actually lower the cooking temperature and shorten the cooking time.
Oh, okay. So even though air fryers are known for their quick cooking times, it might actually be beneficial to dial back the temperature a little bit if we're really trying to minimize those AGEs.
Exactly. And using a little bit of oil can also help prevent food from sticking and burning, which can also contribute to AGE formation.
Wait a minute. I thought the whole point of air frying was to use less oil. Is it okay to add oil?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine to add a small amount of oil, especially when you're cooking foods that are prone to sticking, like lean proteins or vegetables. The key is to use it sparingly, just enough to coat the food lightly.
Okay, so what kind of oil is best to use then? Does it matter?
Oils with a higher smoke point, like avocado oil or refined coconut oil, are generally better choices for air frying because they can withstand those higher temperatures without breaking down and creating harmful compounds.
So we want to avoid oils that have a low smoke point, like extra virgin olive oil or flaxseed oil.
Exactly. Those are better suited for lower heat cooking methods, like sautéing or salad dressings.
Got it, okay. So to recap our discussion on AGs then, it seems like the best approach is to cook at lower temperatures, shorten the cooking times, and use a small amount of high smoke point oil if needed. Are there any other tips for minimizing AG formation in the air fryer?
Another helpful strategy is to marinate your foods before cooking. Marinades that are acidic, like ones that contain lemon juice or vinegar, can help to reduce AG formation.
Oh, interesting. So a simple marinade can do double duty, adding flavor and potentially reducing harmful compounds.
Exactly. And if you're really concerned about ADEs, you can also just opt for cooking methods that use lower temperatures in general, like steaming or poaching.
Right. I'm starting to get the sense that even with the best intentions, there's always a trade-off. I might gain the convenience and the crispiness of air frying, but potentially at the expense of increased AGs.
That's a thoughtful observation. And it just highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of different cooking methods and making informed choices that align with your own personal health goals and priorities.
I'm really glad we're having this in-depth conversation. It's going way beyond just the surface level marketing hype and giving me a much deeper understanding of the science and the practical considerations of using an air fryer.
I'm glad to hear that. And, this is a conversation that's relevant to anyone who is curious about making healthier choices in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's not about demonizing or praising specific appliances. It's about empowering ourselves with knowledge.
Right.
And making informed decisions.
Absolutely. So I think we've done a great job laying out the key considerations. When it comes to air frying and AGEs, is there anything else about AGEs, though, that you think our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, there's one more point I want to emphasize. While we've been talking about how to minimize AGEs during cooking, it's important to remember that they're also present in a lot of processed foods.
Oh, so it's not just about how we cook our food, but also about the types of food we're choosing to eat in the first place.
Exactly. Processed foods like chips and crackers and sugary drinks often contain high levels of AGEs already because they've been exposed to high temperatures during manufacturing.
So even if I'm being really meticulous about minimizing ADEs in my home cooking, I could still be consuming them through processed foods.
That's right. That's why it's so crucial to pay attention to the overall quality of your diet and to prioritize whole, unprocessed foods as much as possible.
That's such a good point. It really reinforces the idea that healthy eating is a holistic approach. It's not just about focusing on one specific cooking method or nutrient.
You said it perfectly.
All right, so I feel like we've covered the topic of AGEs pretty thoroughly. What other aspects of air frying should we explore?
Okay, well, we've talked about the health benefits and potential drawbacks. We've compared air frying to other cooking methods and delved into the nuances of AGs. So maybe now we can shift gears a bit and talk about the practical side of things, like the convenience factor, ease of use, and the different types of foods that are particularly well-suited for air frying.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm eager to learn more about the practical tips and tricks that can help us all get the most out of our air fryers.
I think you'll find this next section both informative and inspiring.
Okay, so let's talk about the practical side of air fryers. What makes them so convenient?
Well, for one thing, air fryers preheat so much faster than a conventional oven. I mean, we're talking minutes versus like potentially 10 minutes or more for an oven to preheat.
Yeah, that's true. That's a huge time saver, especially for those busy weeknights when I'm trying to get dinner on the table quickly.
Exactly. And because they're smaller, they use less energy overall compared to a full-sized oven.
Yeah.
So that could be something to think about if you're trying to be more energy conscious.
Yeah, for sure. The energy efficiency angle is definitely appealing. But let's be honest, sometimes even the healthiest foods can get a little boring if you cook them the same way all the time.
Right.
So does air frying offer any advantages? When it comes to making food, well, more exciting.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love most about air fryers. They can achieve that crispy, crunchy texture that we all crave, but without all the added fat and calories of deep frying.
Right. So it's like a guilt-free way to enjoy those textures.
Exactly. And think about the versatility. From vegetables and proteins to even some desserts, you can air fry just about anything.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. All my friends that have air fryers are like constantly experimenting with new recipes and techniques.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It encourages culinary exploration, and it can really make cooking more fun and engaging.
Okay, so I'm sold on the convenience and the versatility, but are there any potential downsides to air fryers that we should be aware of? Things that might not be so obvious at first glance.
Well, one thing to consider is that air fryers tend to be relatively small, especially compared to a full-sized oven.
Okay.
So if you're cooking for a large family or having people over, you might need to cook in batches, which could be time-consuming.
That makes sense. And what about cleaning? I've heard that some air fryers can be kind of a hassle to clean.
It really depends on the model. Some air fryers have dishwasher-safe parts, which makes cleanup a breeze, but others have nooks and crannies that can trap food and be a little tricky to clean, especially if food gets burned or stuck.
Yuck. So ease of cleaning is definitely something to consider when choosing an air fryer. Are there any other things to watch out for?
Yeah, one thing the article didn't mention, but that I always advise people to be mindful of, is the potential for overcooking.
Oh, right.
Because air fryers cook food so quickly, it's easy to accidentally overdo it, especially if you're not used to cooking with one.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely see that happening. I tend to get distracted in the kitchen sometimes.
It happens to the best of us. So my advice is to always start with shorter cooking times than you think you need, and then just adjust as you go. And always refer to the manufacturer's instructions for specific cooking times and temperatures for different foods.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Better to err on the side of caution and check the food frequently than end up with a burnt mess.
Exactly. So speaking of cooking different foods, let's dive into some of the things that air fryers are particularly well suited for.
Okay. I've heard that air fryers are amazing for cooking vegetables. Is that true?
Absolutely. Air fryers are a fantastic way to cook vegetables because they can achieve that crispy roasted texture without needing a lot of oil.
What types of vegetables would you say work best?
Well, just about any vegetable can be air fried, but some are definitely better suited for this method than others. Think about the vegetables that you would typically roast or grill: broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, peppers, onions, zucchini, mushrooms.
Those all sound delicious.
They are.
What about root vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes?
Root vegetables are great in the air fryer too. They tend to cook up really nicely. Develop a crispy exterior while remaining soft and tender on the inside.
This is making me think about those air-fried sweet potato fries that I see all over social media.
Oh yeah, those are so good. Air-fried sweet potato fries are a delicious and healthier alternative to the deep-fried kind. And they're super easy to make.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list of things to try. So we've covered veggies. What about proteins? Can you air fry meat and seafood?
You can. Air fryers are a great option for cooking chicken, fish, shrimp, even steak.
Really? Steak. I'm a little skeptical about cooking steak in an air fryer. Can it really get that nice seared crust that you get from grilling or pan searing?
It might not be exactly the same, but it can get pretty close. The key is to use a high temperature and to make sure the steak is patted dry before cooking.
Interesting. So it's all about adjusting the cooking techniques to suit the air fryer environment.
Exactly. It's about understanding the principles of heat and airflow and adapting your methods accordingly.
This is making me realize that there's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to air fryers. It's not just about tossing food in and hoping for the best.
That's true. There is a bit of experimentation involved, but that's part of the fun. And there are so many resources available online now. Recipes, tips, tutorials, all designed to help you get the most out of your air fryer.
That's good to know. I'm definitely feeling more confident about trying out different recipes and techniques. But before we wrap up, I think it's important to circle back to the health aspect one last time.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground, but it's always good to reiterate those key takeaways, especially when it comes to health and nutrition.
Right. So to recap, we've learned that air fryers can be a really valuable tool for cooking delicious and potentially healthier meals. because they use significantly less oil than deep frying. This can translate to fewer calories, less absorption of those harmful compounds, and potentially a lower risk of chronic diseases.
That's right.
But we also learned that we need to be mindful that air fryers still use high heat, which can contribute to the formation of AGs.
Right.
And while air fryers can be great for cooking a wide variety of foods, from vegetables to proteins, it's still important to choose whole, unprocessed foods as much as possible and be mindful of portion sizes.
Exactly. It's not just about the cooking method. It's about the overall quality of your diet and the choices that you make every day.
Absolutely. I think that's a great message to end on. It's about taking a holistic approach to health and recognizing that no single appliance or ingredient is a magic bullet.
I couldn't agree more.
It's about cultivating a mindful and balanced relationship with food and cooking.
Beautifully said.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
I hope everyone listening enjoyed it and learned something new. And until next time, happy air frying, everyone.